So this is chapter 8, which is equipment. We've covered chapter 7, which was labor, and covered chapter 9, which was specialty contractor last week. The reason we skipped chapter 8 because chapter 7 and 8 tend to go together, labor and specialty contractor, and also they're small of chapters. So I figured just to combine them both in the 2 chapters. But for equipment, I wanted to dedicate this lecture for just equipment. So I'm not sure if that is going to take 1 lecture or 2. We'll see how it goes because equipment is very interesting and detailed topic. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So for equipment cost, if you own your equipment, then there is some factors that you need to take into considerations. One of them is depreciation. So the moment you drive the equipment out of the dealership lot, per se, if you will, then there is a drop in the value of this equipment that counts toward depreciation or count toward whatever value that counts for. But there's a drop in the value and also depreciation for every year you utilize this equipment. So you have to make this, and you have to take this into consideration. Also, another thing is interest. So if you purchased your equipment, there is an annual interest on this piece of equipment. So you have to take those into consideration. Now remember, depreciation is on annually basis, interest is on annually basis, yet the charge rate of equipment is based on hourly basis, whether you own the equipment or you rent it. So with that, you're gonna have to convert this depreciation, this interest cost into hourly basis and then add it to your regular hourly charge so you can have a return on investment. Now, a second thing is insurance. So whether you utilize the equipment or not, you have to pay insurance on this piece of equipment, and therefore this should be accounted for. Now, taxes, those big machines are assets and properties, and for those you have to pay taxes on them. Those taxes are annually, correct? So then you're gonna have to convert those taxes into an hourly basis and count it toward the overall. And then storage. So for the storage, we'll talk about the storage in more details later in this lecture, but storage is very important factor to take into consideration, especially if you own your equipment. So let's say if you have a Dryden shop or storage, then you're gonna have to pay for whether it's Dryden or just a flat lot, you're gonna have to pay for monthly rate. If it's fenced in, then you have to pay for the cost of the fence, cameras, security, utilities, and a lot of lighting, and so many other things. So you factor all this cost in towards storage, and then you factor those into an hourly basis, and then you add it to the hourly rate of your equipment. So now you can see it's not just having the piece of equipment as like an ownership or rented. It's something easy, but there is a lot of factors you have to take into consideration, and therefore we're going to talk about in more details over those here. So one of the most challenging thing for an estimator to choose or to work with is equipment selection. Remember, this is a pre-construction, and you don't know which equipment to use, or you should know, but you should also know that this piece of equipment should be utilized on just phase of the project or for the entire project. And according to this, you need to make your decision. How many equipment do you have to use? Do they operate all in the same time? And also their maintenance, their operating cost, and so forth. So if you're thinking of having this piece of equipment, then buying it, then this equipment should pay itself. Otherwise, it's just waste of money, right? It's a common sense to have it, and renting it would be more feasible. But some equipment, purchasing them is more feasible because you get to use them on multiple projects, or use them on one phase or two during this project, and you have a few projects going on at the same time. Then you can send this equipment to other projects, but you have to time that with your scheduler. So that's something also to look for. So this is an example here that I wanted to share with you. So for instance, if the piece of equipment costs you $15,000, but if you do the math, and this piece of equipment could save you $20,000, even if you don't use it on other project, and you end up salvage this piece of equipment out, you still have some profit on it. So you better off buy it instead of renting it. So again, we talked about this, what phase of the project you should use your piece of equipment on. But there are a lot of questions that you have to ask yourself when to utilize a piece of equipment. So one of these questions is, what will be done with it? And where are you going to store it, and for how long you're going to use it for? What will be will be returned to the main yard if you own it? Is there a room to store it or on the project, so you can send it to the second project and aligned, or you send it back to the yard and you're not going to use it for a while? So, and if it's rented, then you can just send it back to the renting company, and you don't have to deal with it anymore. But also you have to make sure that the transportation, shipping this equipment to your project and take it back, who's responsible on it? So those costs have to be taken into consideration. Now, we've talked about this before. Labors, materials, and equipment typically are counted toward the direct cost, correct? So then not all the equipment must be counted toward the direct cost. Some of the equipment could be counted toward the indirect cost, which is the case here. Why? One of the machines probably I would think of on top of my head is cleaning machines. Those machines that workers can ride them and drive them through the job site on a polished concrete flooring. This is kind of a machine you can consider toward the indirect cost, because you can count it toward any package or attach it to a certain item of work. So it could be counted toward the indirect cost. Now, another example I would think of, it's a tower crane and handling materials. Actually, I wrote down a few examples here, like material handling equipment, such as lift trucks or telescope forklifts. Those machines cannot be attached to a certain package or an item. So it's better off for you as an estimator to count them toward the indirect cost, because you're going to use them on a regular basis. Now, I have to mention that the operator of those machines are not included in the hourly base of these machines, and those operator wages should be counted toward the direct cost, not the indirect cost. Right? I know it's kind of overwhelming with all this information, but they will all make sense as we go through the slides. We've talked about this.